now that they had someone who was willing to manufacture it, they made the first version. And so this was in 1981. And at the time they had John Watson was one of the drivers. What they had done was they had created a carbon fiber monocoque. And this idea is still used to this day, which is basically like an extremely strong, but also light, carbon fiber shell, let's say, that is within the chassis that the driver sits in. And when the car crashes, the carbon fiber bits kind of go everywhere, but the driver is safe in the chassis. And so in 1981, John Watson had an extremely bad shunt. Had he not had the carbon monocoque, he might have been, injured much more, but this helped to protect him. And then all of a sudden, many teams which had been skeptical of this whole carbon fiber thing realized its potential. But basically, aside from Team Lotus, McLaren was the first people to really manufacture and make this all carbon fiber car. So now we're getting into 1981, now we're getting to 1982. At the same time, this Teddy Mayer guy who I mentioned before, who was one of the, who had taken over from Bruce McLaren and was an old stalwart in the McLaren thing, decided that he did not like the way that the company was going. He felt that this new avenue was too risky and he wanted out. And so now Ron Dennis had to scramble to figure out how he was going to be able to keep all this going.
Came in on Monday morning as a single envelope with Ron written on it. And when I opened it, he said, "This isn't working for me." So I walked into his office and I said, "Teddy, got your note. I don't really have a problem. I think we're doing great." But he was concerned I was taking too much risk all the time. I said, "I think one of us has to buy the other out, that you've started this process." But he had forgotten one thing, which was, my credibility was running very high with Philip Morris. And I think I was seeing the architect of the rebirth of McLaren. I went to Philip Morris and I said, "Look, perhaps you'll not be surprised to know that we're in a bit of a deadlock in the company." And so I said, "Well, I need some help. I want you to forward pay me." They came back and they said, "Okay, we'll do it." I said, "Are you sure you're going to have enough money?" I said, 100%. I will be able to continue, but I need this acceleration of payment. So then I went to my bank. Banker was still the traditional type of bank manager. His name was Mr. Hermsen. Up until that moment, if I'd had a dog, I would have called it Hermsen and I would have kicked it quite frequently because Mr. Hermsen was never very user-friendly. Mr. Hermsen on the company said, "I'd like to borrow some money." I said, "How much do you want to borrow?" I said, "Whatever the number was, £1.5 million. I said, "But before you answer, I want to borrow it for 24 hours. So I set the whole deal up, and for tax reasons, the deal was executed in Estoril, Portugal. There was a table full of documents, and all I could see in Teddy's face was he wanted to see whose name was on the cheque. So all the documents got signed, two lawyers sort of met, and the first time I've ever really spoken about it. He had a payment that was beyond his wildest hopes. I owned briefly 100% of the company because I quickly sold some shares to refinance my life. And that was really the biggest breakthrough. 1982, I emerged in effectively complete control of the company.